So speaking of the pandemic, and we're coming out of it, everybody is, when I look at my podcast audiences, they love talking about economics. And everybody right now has an idea about where the economy is going. It's going to go up because we got our vaccines before all the other countries, so we're going to be able to manufacture our way out of this. Oh, it's going to go down because inflation's going to get wild, and now all of a sudden your money's not going to be worth anything. Do you have any speculation on where the economy is headed right now?
Well, any kind of speculation I would have is going to be totally off target, but I will take you back a year to where my speculation was, and I think it was along a lot of people, it was complete and total panic, because I'm thinking the stock market is just the bottom's going to drop out, and it did, but luckily temporarily. I'm thinking the housing market's just going to be, a disaster. What's this going to do to housing prices? Well, look what it's done to housing prices. So I have a lot of optimism about the economy, but I think that the economy is going to rapidly, it already is, it's rapidly changing. I think last time you and I talked a little bit about commercial real estate. That's a bit of an untold story right now. What's going to happen with all this commercial real estate? You have a lot of workers that probably won't be back in offices. What is that going to mean? I do have a lot of inflation concerns because I think that it's very real. However, there are indications from just economists that I would trust to indicate that might be somewhat temporary, not as a big a concern moving forward. I'm not convinced of that. I'm just saying that those are some of the things that I've read from people that I trust. So overall, I think there are amazing opportunities. And one of the things that's very interesting, and I know a guy like you would appreciate this, is everything that happened where these opportunities were created over the pandemic. And, you have this... As humans, we have this instinct, right? We have to survive. And that survival instinct kicked in with business owners who had to shift gears into areas that they never thought were possible, and now they're having success. People found little niche markets for things that are now popular. So I think that the opportunity that the pandemic created for different unique things in the economy also is going to be a big benefit. So there's a mixed bag there.
To me, the big opportunity is if there's kind of a fraught, we don't know what's going on, this is a chance for people. We talked about the Peter Thiel paradoxes the last time you were on the podcast. Like, why don't you try and do something that no other city is doing? Because people are moving, they're leaving cities, they're trying new things. So one of my ideas, I don't know that I've ever told you this one, I think that because we are the center of ag tech, and because we have so many areas that are low population density, even though you're in an urban area, right? St. Louis is kind of hollowed out in some ways. What I think we should do is try to become the drone capital of the world and put yourself up that say, if you come to St. Louis, we're going to work with the airport and the FAA, and we're going to make it so the drones can fly here. And not only would you be able to do it for things like Amazon delivery, where you'd be able to really ratchet that up in a whole new way and be able to lower your traffic problems, but you also have this huge agricultural market here. And people don't realize that the innovation in biotech is not happening like it did when Monsanto was running full steam. You have the companies here and they're trying to do innovation, but a lot of that stuff is tedious and it's incredibly regulated. So it's going to take forever for any one of those innovations to actually enter the market and make an impact the way that Roundup made an impact on St. Louis. So what I think we should do is try and draw the world's drone experts into the St. Louis region and use it as a way to both do delivery and agriculture and really set ourselves apart. We would bring in some of the hottest tech talent probably in the world, and it'd be a cool place to be.
I love that idea. And I don't know, I don't know enough about all the airspace and what would have to be changed when it comes to the laws, but I do think that this has happened with you and I before. I love the creativity that you have with some of these ideas, because there's no way we can continue to have an economy that moves forward, especially here in St. Louis, without that type of creativity. If we don't have ideas, and you're going to swing the bat, this whole notion of what do they call the thing between Kansas City and St. Louis, the train?
Oh, the Hyperloop.
The Hyperloop. I have no idea if that's feasible or not. But you know what? I want to look at it. I think it's worth investigating. And if we don't start thinking about things out of the box as cliche moving forward, we're just going to shrivel up here in St. Louis when it comes to the economy. And now, where I live out in the Fenton area in St. Louis County, we have where the Chrysler plant used to be. We used to have a thriving, economy with blue collar workers. They're building a bunch of Amazon facilities. So there are opportunities moving forward with drones that will be a big part of our life. The resistance would come from people saying, that's a privacy thing. We don't want a bunch of drones flying around St. Louis. Believe me, that would be a big part of the component if that ever happened. But why not talk about stuff like that, right?
Well, and I think that the biggest move that any city could do, it's why I was actually excited about Kara Spencer potentially becoming mayor, because she was very open to playing with ideas. And to me, look at the only manufacturing business that's come to St. Louis or the Missouri area in the last 10 years. It is from the deregulation of marijuana. So the only increase that we have in manufacturing comes from the decreasing of a law.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, and that's very true.
And
right?
so why don't we look at what are the laws that if we took them off and we were the first one to do it, you give people a reason to come here because there's a freedom here that isn't somewhere else, and that opens things up. It doesn't cost you a single dollar in tax incentives. You don't have to get all you have to do is say, hey, everybody, we're going to just try this thing. We're
right.
do it as a temporary thing. We're going to do it in this area. And the more freedom we have, the more you're going to see innovation happening here as opposed to somewhere else.
I love it. I think, just coming up with a bunch of ideas like that and seeing what might stick or where you can get some outside help or influence, I think it's worth trying. But we need, we're not really stocked full of local politicians full of ideas, Vance. I don't know if you've noticed that.
It's a really painful thing to go to a local county meeting, a local town, because you're right. It's a bunch of people that have the tedious time to sit there and argue about bullshit, about just total nonsense.
Yeah, it's disappointing. Even when I put my faith in someone that I think is going to come forward with ideas. The problem is the political consultants get involved. And I think even when you have people that are willing to think outside of the mainstream a little bit, the consultants say, oh, don't do that. We have to be careful, or we have to talk about this because this is going to raise more money. That's where we are with politics.
I think that actually goes, it's not just politics, it's corporate culture too. People have no idea how much public relations companies control what's going on in the United States.
Yeah. I do, and you're right about that. People don't have any clue.
What you don't realize is if you're running a large biotech company, you're running Monsanto back when it was here, right? You're an executive. You are running through thousands of decisions. You're overseeing huge numbers of people, and then you've also got to relate with the public.
Right.
And so, if you're not selling anything to the public, like Monsanto wasn't, they don't really know very much. So they think, well, we'll just outsource this, and we'll have a PR firm. But that PR firm is filled with people that have a different way of thinking about the world than all of your employees, and if you're an ag company, then all the people you're selling to. And so now you have the person that is setting up the platform for what is our political position, which is exactly why Coca-Cola, American Airlines, and these companies are coming out with these absurd political statements. And it's not them. It is them because they put the final say on it.
It's their PR consultants. It's their first.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Right, exactly. And I guess they're not willing to push back and say, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't do this, because they trust that the PR firms are making the decisions for them. And they have, look, in those situations, they're worried about the shareholders. And I get that, but I think you should be worried about the shareholders from a couple of different perspectives.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of times the people that are inside of a PR firm, they're not giving bad advice because they're sitting in there being like, these are my machinations. They've been told since they went to college and they were studying graphic design or account management that this is the way you assert goodness into the world. You make these political pronouncements. You make these decisions about how race is or isn't or whatever that is. And so you're watching the fact that our colleges were pumping students out in this way come back into the world through the world of PR, is my opinion.
Not shocking when you think about it that way, right?
Not at all. Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.